The flight attendant laid down a small napkin gently onto the tray before me. Her trembling hands revealed something was terribly, unmistakably wrong. Scrawled in hurried ink were urgent words warning me. Pretend you are sick. Get off this plane. Right now, immediately, please. I stared up slowly at her in disbelief. Her wide, frightened eyes held panic. Not irritation, not confusion, only terror. She leaned in close, voice barely above breath, and whispered softly, "Please, I'm truly begging you." In that exact moment, I couldn't understand whether this was some prank, a misunderstanding gone wrong, or something far darker. But the events unfolding 2 hours after that made one thing certain. Her warning was real, terrifyingly, undeniably real. And that warning alone is the reason I'm still alive here today. Before we continue further, make sure you subscribe to the channel now and comment exactly where you're watching from today. This story could realistically happen to absolutely anyone. My name is Isula Warren, and I'm a 30-year-old travel nurse who has witnessed enough suffering to last several lifetimes. I've held fading hands of patients taking final breaths in dim rooms. I've comforted grieving families wandering helpless hospital corridors. After endless, exhausting months of nonstop hospital shifts, I finally decided I needed a small break and planned to surprise my mother in Boston. She had recently recovered after her heart surgery, and she always insisted my voice helped heal her faster every day. I couldn't wait to see her joyful face when I appeared unexpectedly. It was a normal, busy afternoon inside LAX. People laughed around casually. Children pressed smudged cheeks against terminal glass panes, watching heavy planes taxi. Business travelers tapped away on glowing laptop keyboards. I felt tired yet calm, wrapped in peace. I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude because life finally felt steady for the first time. As I boarded slowly onto the aircraft aisle, I noticed the attendants greeting passengers with rehearsed smiles worn like routine. But one attendant's expression, her name tag said Alyssa, stood out. Instantly. She wasn't simply polite. She was intensely observing. Her scanning eyes moved over each boarding passenger like she was memorizing faces for some reason. When our eyes met, she paused half a second, as though she recognized me from somewhere unknown, then quickly looked away. My assigned seat was near the middle aisle. Across from me sat a man wearing black who shifted constantly, nervously. He opened the overhead compartment twice for nothing, placing absolutely nothing inside. Beside him, a silent teenager hugged a backpack tight against his chest. Nothing seemed obviously wrong, yet the atmosphere carried a thin, strange tension. Subtle like quiet storms gathering beneath clear skies. I texted my sister, boarded the flight now. Mom has no idea I'm coming home today. Get ready to record. Her reaction for me, she replied with hearts and reminders to bring her favorite airport cookies. Everything felt normal enough as I buckled in and adjusted my seatbelt. But then I noticed Alyssa once more, moving slowly along the aisle, pretending to check overhead bins like routine duty, but her eyes weren't focused on luggage compartments. They were on people. She looked absolutely terrified of someone nearby, though I couldn't tell who. As she reached slowly toward my assigned row, she bent down slightly as if placing something like a napkin carefully onto my waiting tray. She never made eye contact, never changed expression, and then continued walking as though nothing happened. I unfolded the napkin. You are not safe. Pretend you are sick. Get off this plane immediately, without any delay. My entire mind blanked. For a brief second, I believed it was some ridiculous, cruel prank. Maybe someone was secretly filming passengers for reactions, like a strange experiment. Maybe this was merely a horrible accidental mistake. But when I looked back toward Alyssa, again, she had stopped completely at the end. She turned slowly around and locked eyes directly with me, intensely still. There was no humor, no confusion whatsoever, only raw, unmistakable urgency there. My pulse began racing. I scanned the cabin to see if anyone else had received something. Everyone appeared completely calm. No one seemed alarmed. Something was definitely happening, and I was apparently the only one warned. I didn't know what to believe at all, but one thing remained absolutely clear and certain. I couldn't ignore that look burning in her eyes, desperate and frightened. If you want to know what happened next, when I stayed seated, and why this, flight changed every part completely of my entire life. Stay here with me. And don't forget now to subscribe and comment your country or city down below right now. This is a story the whole world needs to hear and remember. The napkin rested lightly in my shaking lap like some ticking bomb, each written word echoing loudly inside my thoughts. You are not safe. Pretend you are sick. Get off this plane immediately, without hesitation whatsoever. My instincts screamed urgently for me to act, but logic pinned me silent, frozen in place. I glanced subtly toward Alyssa, the flight attendant, who stood by the galley with her back straight and eyes fixed not on me now, but on two passengers 3 rows ahead quietly. Her posture wasn't casual, it was tense, guarded, as if preparing for something imminent to happen. I kept telling myself that maybe I was overreacting to everything happening. Maybe she somehow slipped a note to wrong person entirely by accident. Maybe it wasn't even intended for me personally. But then she turned again, and for just a split tiny second, her eyes flicked directly into mine and revealed something that shattered everything pure, uncontrollable fear there. That wasn't the expression of someone playing tricks. That was the expression of someone trying desperately to save someone's life. I scanned the cabin again, searching carefully for anything unusual or strange. A man wearing gray sat rigid in silence near the window seat, hands gripping tight edges as if bracing impact. Across the narrow aisle, a woman in business clothes tapped her foot fast, glancing repeatedly toward the front of plane instead of reading calmly. But what made my skin crawl the worst was the man positioned in the black jacket near the emergency exit. He wasn't nervous, no, he was unnervingly calm, focused with calculated attention. His gaze drifted slowly from cockpit door forward back toward Alyssa repeatedly, as if waiting patiently for some silent signal. I shifted in place, trying to steady breathing. There had to exist a reasonable, logical explanation for everything happening now. Maybe someone on board had a medical emergency. Maybe someone was having a severe mental breakdown. Maybe there was something simple I wasn't seeing. And then suddenly I noticed something chillingly wrong. The overhead bins above first class were sealed shut tightly with yellow zip ties, wrapped firmly something I had witnessed only once in training videos regarding in-flight security. My background as nurse helped me read situations quickly, instinctively, accurately too. Something wasn't right here. Something was being contained, monitored, restricted, controlled tightly. Before I processed anything, Alyssa stepped toward me, pretending to check belts. She leaned in close, voice barely even audible. Do it right now. Say you feel faint. If you stay seated on this flight today, you will not land alive, not this time. I wanted to speak, ask her many questions, but her expression stopped every word in me. It wasn't fear for herself at all. No. It was fear clearly for me specifically, somehow. She straightened immediately, smiled mechanically, and continued forward. My whole body tingled with creeping adrenaline waves. I slowly reached upward toward the call button to signal I needed assistance urgently right now. But before I pressed the button with intention, I hesitated suddenly midair. If this was real, drawing attention to myself could make things worse. What if pretending sickness triggered whatever danger waited? My fingers brushed lightly against the call button when a loud thud echoed from the back, like something heavy dropped. Instantly, every head turned. A male flight attendant rushed quickly toward noise, and I caught glimpses of his pale face, white as fragile paper. Behind him, the teenage boy clutching his backpack breathed rapidly into hands, eyes darting in panic. Panic not about flying, panic that resembled fear of something being discovered. He kept whispering softly, "I can't do this, can't do this," as if forced unwillingly onto this very plane. Suddenly, the plane's engines changed pitch sharply as it accelerated down runway faster and faster ahead. My heartbeat pounded violently. This was the moment. Once the plane lifted into the growing air, any chance to safely intervene would completely vanish. I stared out quietly the window toward the terminal fading far behind, and realized with bone-deep certainty that I was about to make possibly the most important decision of my entire life. Then suddenly my phone vibrated softly in hand with a message appearing from my younger sister. "Send me a pic from the plane, please. Want to post it before Mom sees you arriving unexpectedly today." A moment of heartbreak pierced straight through me. She had no idea. No one truly did. I typed back quickly, "Something's wrong. Pray now. For me, immediately, please." My finger hovered briefly. Then I pressed send. As the aircraft turned sharply toward the runway, a wave of dizziness washed over me instantly. Not pretend, but real, born entirely from fear. My vision blurred momentarily, and I realized clearly that doing absolutely nothing was the most dangerous option I could take. I unbuckled my seatbelt and pushed myself upward on shaking, unsteady legs. A few nearby passengers turned irritated, glances toward me, assuming I was causing an unnecessary delay, but I simply didn't care at all anymore. As I stepped slowly into the narrow aisle, the man in black jacket swiveled his head toward me, chillingly slow. His eyes were cold, focused, assessing like predators, noticing unwanted sudden movement from cornered vulnerable prey. In that exact moment, Alyssa appeared beside me, placing a steadying hand lightly onto my arm, not to stop me, but unmistakably to guide. Her voice sounded calm, but her words chilled. "Follow me if you want to live now." Alyssa kept her grip firmly on my arm as though assisting someone experiencing sudden illness mid-flight. But the hold felt too intentional to be purely supportive behavior only. The man in black shifted from his seat, pretending merely to stretch, but his suspicious eyes never left us once. Every sense in me flared sharply to life. Alyssa guided me forward toward the front cabin, her voice loud enough for others to hear. "Ma'am, take deep breaths. We are going now to get you water." But just as we reached the main galley, she leaned in close and whispered urgently, "Careful, do not look back. Someone is watching you. Your seat was not assigned today by accident." My chest tightened painfully as she sat me into the jump seat near the exit door. The male flight attendant stepped beside her, pretending to fetch needed oxygen. Alyssa's lips barely moved as she continued speaking. "The person targeting you believes you are someone else completely mistaken today. If you stay on board or return to seat, they will take action during cruising altitude soon." My thoughts spun wildly. How could my seat be targeted so specifically? Was this mistaken identity? Phew. And if my seat belonged to someone else, who was it originally meant to be for? Alyssa reached discreetly inside a small hidden compartment and slid a device quietly toward her colleague. A silent signal passed instantly between the two. The colleague then nodded and stepped away quickly. As the aircraft continued rolling steadily down taxiway, I noticed Alyssa's professional calm beginning to crack. Her breathing quickened slightly as she contacted cockpit, requesting emergency return back to gate for escalation. The captain responded hesitantly, asking her for confirmation, and that's when suddenly I saw something chilling. Alyssa looked past me over my shoulder directly through the parted curtain and locked eyes firmly with someone unseen there. Expression instantly hardened. The captain then announced we were experiencing delays and returning back now to the nearest gate. The cabin atmosphere shifted in a single heartbeat. Passengers murmured frustrated complaints, groaning loudly in irritation. But beneath the noise, I sensed something deeper: panic growing inside individuals whose hidden plans unraveled. The man in black stood fully upright now, his calm demeanor shattered. He glanced toward cockpit, then sharply toward me, then toward overhead bins, as if calculating everything. Behind him, the quiet teenage boy tightened grip around his worn backpack, his lips moving rapidly like whispered desperate prayers. The woman in suit pulled out her phone and began texting furiously, her trembling hands shaking. Alyssa positioned herself intentionally between me and Isle, blocking their line entirely, as if she knew any sudden movement toward the exit could trigger absolute chaos instantly now. "You need to choose right now," she whispered while keeping a professional smile plastered for appearances. "If you get off this plane right now, your life will be turned completely upside down. But if you stay, you will not get another single chance ever to leave this aircraft alive again," she warned. My heart slammed violently against the inside ribs. I pictured my mother waiting patiently in Boston, thinking I was only hours away from home. I pictured my sister laughing somewhere in dorm, probably editing some funny surprise video for Mom. Then I thought deeply about the terrifying possibility that if Alyssa was right about all this, my family would never see my face again. The plane was already turning slowly back toward the main airport terminal, but we were still moving steadily forward anyway. If the threat was truly desperate and immediate, they might act before we even reached gate. Alyssa unbuckled swiftly and moved straight to intercom. Her voice remained professional, but I caught trembling hidden beneath her composure. "Flight attendants, prepare doors for arrival," she announced. The engines gradually slowed. Runway lights reflected faintly against the narrow windows. Suddenly, the teenage boy stood abruptly, face pale. "I need to get off this plane now." "Please," he shouted loudly, his voice cracking heavily with unmistakable real terror. A ripple of confusion spread across the cabin. It became painfully clear that I wasn't the only one warned earlier or threatened in silence. Before anyone could move, the man in black jacket reached inside his carry-on with deliberate intent. Alyssa stepped forward immediately, raising her hand sharply. "Sir, please take your seat," she commanded firmly. But he froze instantly mid-motion as he noticed the cockpit door opening and two uniformed marshals stepping quietly into aisle from the hidden first-class section in front. That was when I realized this entire situation was far more complex than one lone crew member trying to intervene. There was already an active federal operation running, and somehow I had been placed directly into the very center unexpectedly. As the air marshals moved slowly down aisle, disguised previously as passengers, Alyssa turned back toward me and said softly but firmly with certainty, "You were never the target originally, but now you have become key." My breath caught instantly. Every nerve and body told me that this moment right here now was the dividing line between my old life and whatever came next. I nodded once firmly. "I want to get off this plane now," I said out loud, my voice strangely steady though my hands trembled. That single sentence was my irreversible decision made. Alyssa exhaled heavily, as if she had been holding her breath painfully for far too long. She stepped aside quickly, signaling toward the marshal. The plane hadn't even fully stopped moving. Yet before the marshal secured the aisle and prepared for immediate, rapid evacuation, I had made my choice and there was absolutely no turning back. The plane barely reached a complete total stop when everything erupted suddenly, all at the same time in chaotic bursts. The seatbelt signs were still glowing on, but too federal. Marshals were already moving fast down the narrow aisle with controlled, urgent precision. Passengers hadn't been informed why we were returning. Whispers shifted into panic as the marshal approached the man in black. He rose deliberately, calm, his expression flat, unreadable. His chilling gaze flicked from me to cockpit, then back toward danger. His hands subtly moved inside his jacket lining. Before he retrieved anything, the marshal barked orders, forcing the man still. But that was beginning. A second hidden threat near the exit row suddenly lunged forward violently, grabbing the emergency lever. The entire cabin gasped. A flight attendant jumped, trying desperately to stop, but he shoved hard with unexpected, brutal strength. The teenage boy screamed, "Don't open that door. It's nothing like that." His voice cracked painfully, filled with horrified certainty, not fear-deep, broken regret. Chaos ripped through passengers, some ducking, some crying, others shouting in confusion. Children sobbed uncontrollably everywhere. A woman in business who had been texting shot upward, in panic, trying to push through until another marshal restrained her frantic, trembling movements tightly. She yelled out desperately, "You don't understand anything. It's going to activate." Her face was ghostly, all color drained away. The word activate echoed like electric ice inside every part of me. Alyssa grabbed the intercom voice. Steady but strained, remain seated. Don't move. Stay away from compartments. Her tone was controlled, but her eyes trembled. She stepped down aisle, nodded toward one marshal who reached overhead carefully and opened the compartment directly above my seat. Inside was no luggage, only a sealed device, wired with blinking indicators, small as a lunchbox. Silence smothered. The cabin shock froze every passenger. The man in black curved his mouth slightly, not victorious, but satisfied, like we finally witnessed what he always expected. Agents moved with precision, quickly restraining the man with zip ties pulling. His arms behind him, he stared emotionless forward, as though accepting everything. Another marshal scanned the device cautiously, untouched. Lissa stepped toward danger, watching criminals without blinking. The teenage boy repeated, "It wasn't meant here." They changed plans today. They rerouted the target. His voice shook violently, thick with crushing guilt. He wasn't helping them. He was trapped witness, or someone being manipulated into something horrifying unwillingly. The cockpit door opened, revealing the pale captain. He looked at Alyssa, his voice low, tense. "Is the device live?" She nodded with dread. The suffocating tension deepened. Alyssa looked toward me, her expression heartbreaking, serious. "That device was placed directly under seat 14C. Your assigned seat earlier." My breath slipped away. "I chose flight earlier to surprise my mother and switched my booking. That seat change mattered. It had been intercepted. If not for napkin, if I remained seated, if Alyssa hadn't noticed, I would have died before landing that plane." But nightmare kept expanding. Evacuation began. Row eyes, marshals clearing passengers rapidly. The business suit woman kept shouting warnings. Loudly, it's remote triggered. Someone groundside, terror surged once again. Marshals coordinated instantly, alerting ground authorities everywhere. Emergency teams surrounded aircraft. Passengers were directed rearward toward farthest exit available. When my turn arrived, Alyssa steadied my shoulder, her calm voice quiet. "Oh, it was never you. They expected federal informant holding extremely sensitive documents. Flight 14 was targeted for strategic political assassination. You boarded unknowingly instead." As we stepped off, 3 armed tactical units ran down terminal corridor as shouting erupted ahead. People rushed in panic. The teenage boy, trembling now under protective custody, looked back toward me, tears streaking down cheeks, muttering to himself softly. They promised no witnesses. They swore nobody else would be hurt today except the intended target. This was no randomness. It was a crafted operation, a staged mid-air accident designed as perfect cover. And I nearly became the headline on every news broadcast across country, exactly as I stepped fully into the terminal. My phone still buzzed the instant it reconnected, airplane mode finally off. Messages flooded my screen, texts from my mother, my sister frantically calling unknown numbers missed repeatedly. Then came one voicemail from a strange number. I tapped play slowly, my shaking hands trembling. A warped voice whispered, "We know you left. This isn't finished yet." That single sentence shattered any illusion of safety. I realized instantly that I wasn't just surviving. I was now involved in a war unwillingly, one I never chose. The people behind this were far from done. I stood in terminal sirens flashing everywhere around, agents moving with urgency, passengers panicking in shock. Yet every sound blurred, muffled like underwater echoes. The voicemail repeated endlessly, "This is not over." My hands quivered harder, not from near tragedy, but from new reality. I had stepped unknowingly into something far larger. A female agent approached with steady, compassionate seriousness, telling me they'd escort me to secured spaces away from public chaos. She told me quietly the suspects were extremists plotting disguised aviation attacks, hidden as tragic accidents. They hunted a whistleblower traveling under protection today. He canceled last minute without their organization knowing. My targeted seat earlier originally belonged to him. Realization hit me painfully. I lived through this not by simple luck, but because one woman trusted her sharp instincts. If Alyssa had ignored that subtle seat switch, if she hesitated once, if she arrived late, I would be gone. A headline, not survivor. Agents escorted me slowly past reunited families crying, passengers hugging each other, others demanding shaken answers. Their plans were ruined, their journeys forced apart, but later they'd realize those disruptions saved lives. I reached a private, small, quiet holding room where I saw Alyssa waiting without her disguise. No airline persona remained. She was federal undercover. That napkin was more than warning or gesture, it was first step toward saving countless lives. When our eyes met, emotion broke me completely. Not fear this time, but overwhelming deep gratitude. She stepped toward me, resting a gentle hand reassuringly on my shoulder. "I need you aware of something important here," she murmured softly. "Calm, you were never meant to be endangered today. But when I looked, I knew you possessed strength to hear truth." Her words sank deeply, settling inside my chest. My whole life spent helping countless other people, patients, families, strangers hurting. But here I was, depending on someone else to save my own. Over following tense hours, I gave detailed statements. Learning the teenage boy had been coerced brutally by extremist organization forces. He signaled distress quietly by clutching his backpack. The business suit woman was another undercover agent tracking targets from distance. Several agencies had already monitored this operation closely for weeks before today. The decision to stop the entire flight earlier was never truly random. It happened the moment Alyssa slipped me warning, that small, crucial napkin. Because I responded instantly, because I moved quickly, because I didn't ignore those subtle, frightening signs. What I mistook as fear became hidden protection. What I thought was panic was actually clarity. Later that same night, agents drove me carefully to a secured hotel under full federal protection. I lay awake staring at the quiet ceiling, sleep refusing to come. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from family after breaking news aired about a major threat intercepted successfully at LAX. My sister finally reached me on secure line, her voice shaking relief. My mother's voice cracked the second she heard me breathing in disbelief. Tears streamed down silently as realization hit harshly. How close I came to never hearing her voice ever again alive. I expected deep weakness, expected trauma, or breakdown, expected to feel shattered, but something else formed. I felt rising purpose. If that had been my final earthly day, I would have left without telling the world what danger truly hides behind ordinary daily moments, that a single warning can shift your destiny if you choose listening. In following tense days, I worked with authorities as they uncovered networks behind the planned attack. My story stayed hidden, never shared fully publicly due to investigations ongoing. But what I experienced reshaped the path forward. Refused. Living passively began paying close attention, not ruled by fear, but strengthened by awareness. I promised myself firmly to never again dismiss my instincts' quiet signals, or overlook subtle signs others tried desperately offering. Today, I share this because you must understand your life sometimes hinges on unexpected sudden choices. You might never receive a napkin with warning, but you may sense unease about something strange, notice behavior slightly off, or hear inner instinct telling you to act. Do not ignore it. Your instinct isn't panic, your instinct is protection. And sometimes protection appears as stranger urging urgently for you to listen. If this story opened your eyes even slightly or made you grateful to be alive today, subscribe right here now and comment where watching. Your comment may inspire someone else to notice, and that reminder could save their precious life.